Hey guys, you're watching Chaotic TV. We're bringing you some selected games from IEM Katowice. Not sure the pronunciation, but we're going to use that for the remainder of our casts here. And we're going to just jump right into it. In the top right of this first match from the round of 12, we have the Blue Zerg playing for Team Liquid. He is TheLittleOne, TLO.
His opponent for this match is the Red Protoss player, playing for MouseSports. This is MaNa.
MaNa. Yeah, we've been kind of lax on pretty much all casts in the last week. I mean, we got some from Numerical House Cup, which actually have gotten a lot more views than I thought we would get from those, because it's a lesser-known tournament, but it had some pretty big names in it. And this is a well-known tournament with some not-so-big names in it. But we're going to try to make these players big names by having you enjoy us casting them. And essentially, I'm kind of stoked for these new players, because the ones that I don't get to see often, they generally bring something new to the table, or they just stand out with their mechanics or something like that. So it's always a delight to see new players, even though they don't bring as many views as you would like.
Yeah, cool. I think the last games that I sat down and watched were a show match between Scarlet from Team Acer and Minigun from Complexity, I think he's playing for. So, the last games that I've actually watched, I mean, other than the obvious GSL tournaments, but...
Oh, correct, yeah. I watched, didn't Complexity just pick up the STC? It's actually a pretty big pickup.
It's possible.
He did well in BWC, if I'm not mistaken, and he's a pretty well-known player in general. I mean, both these players, to go back into the game, are having a little bit of a hatchery block by MouseSports MaNa from Poland against the German TLO, Dario, I think his name is, and finally gets his hatchery down, but MaNa got his Nexus up first, which is kind of a big deal for Protoss, and he got his Forge afterwards, just now being spotted by that Overlord. He's going to have a nice little wall off, and this other Overlord is going to go to the back of his Naturals mineral line to maybe get a Nidus worm going there if he's lucky, or if not, it's just for good vision. Maybe for a nice little drop or some backdoor Broodlords.
Yeah, more often than not, they're just for those Overlords go over there and hang out till like the 7 or 8 minute mark, and then they suicide in to get the scouting info that they need.
Well, it sounds good to me. We already have 3 hatcheries before the 4-minute mark from TLO, so like, I don't know how he did that even with getting a spawning pool. That's pretty ballsy, and it's pretty awesome, I think.
When you see the fastest fan coming from your Protoss opponent, that's a pretty normal response.
Especially on this map.
What is a bit of a change is we don't see any gas quite yet, so 3 hatcheries before gas is somewhat of a variation, but it's definitely doable with that much queen production from 3 hatcheries. He already has one out down at the natural, and another one coming out at his main, and he'll probably start up another one here as soon as he has the resources for it and the supply.
We see the cybernetic score on the high ground for MaNa, which is it's pretty cool actually. I've seen it before, but it's always nice to see multi-level pylon use, because when you see pylons on the edge and you warp in on the low ground, it's always a lot of fun if you are the Protoss player to be able to exploit the map design like that, and especially when you can exploit it the reverse way in the more seldom used high ground from the low ground pylon.
Yeah, this is just to keep the cybernetics core safe from, say there's some really early roach pressure trying to break this wall down. He won't be able to focus the cybernetics core unless he has an Overlord coming up from outside, which is a lot less common. And
it's also just to keep it, to be able to place it on the pylon before you have to put down another pylon, like this one at the top of the ramp was put down after the cybernetics core was started. So he was able to put that down before that 3rd pylon came down, and yet still be able to keep it protected on that high ground. So, but we do have a 3rd gas coming in for MaNa, a 4th even, and we have gases 1 and 2 out for TLO, and he does have a little bit of a higher supply right now, mainly in harvesters, because the army supply is actually, I guess it is in his favor with those queens, which are counted as army supply for those of you who didn't know. And the robotics facility is coming down for MaNa right now, which I think we'll see an observer first, but we might see something else.
Usually you get the observer just to, you know, be safe, double check that there's nothing crazy coming at you. Especially with this type of build, I think he's planning on, he won't be doing any major attacks until he has at least a +2 attack upgrade. You see Twilight Council coming in soon. Actually, there it is working in right now. Yeah, just normal stuff here. That's going to be a little 2-base timing. He can decide to go all in with it, or he can decide to just have the production facilities and expand behind it. It's a pretty flexible opening for the Protoss player.
Some decent creep spread going around that button hook type pattern of this map that has the gigantic serpentine S through it from TLO. He's just doing that so that there's no pylons he's missing, and because he doesn't want to use an overlord with it.
4th base from TLO.
Oh yeah. Oh, that might be a bit of a stretch for him. He's got only drones out right now. He doesn't really need the extra income from a 4th base. He kind of needs to drop a macro hatch and get his unit production going. He's got 1-1 coming in for the many Zerglings he's got going, so he's going to be doing a little bit of a non-roach play against Protoss. That's not something you normally see.
Against the common immortal play, though, more Zerglings is better. Zerglings kill Stalkers, Immortals, Sentries really fast without proper force fields. And even then, if you catch them in the middle of the map, you can bait out a lot of the force fields before they become useful in the attacks.
TLO getting rid of those rocks in the front of his base so he can get all of his units out without being easily force fielded off, as you were talking about, with all the numerous sentries that are out for MaNa right now. That +2 weapons is coming out, and it looks like it is going to be that +2 timing attack you were talking about. Even
the
more
Zerglings coming in here from TLO. That's a little uncommon. But Banelings kill sentries extremely fast if you can get hits off. It's just not very often to see that. Oh, Ventral Sacks, probably some drop play. That makes sense.
Yep, and it looks like this third may try to be denied by MaNa, but I don't really think it's going to be all that useful to him right now. 2-base Protoss is very powerful, especially with this number of mortals that he's going to have, and the amount of gateways he's already got 7, I think, that you can use off of a 2-base. He's only got 6, actually, my mistake, and it looks like TLO is going to be the one who puts on a little bit of pressure with the numerous Zerglings he's got out in the main of both. Ooh. Some getting picked off by the high ground Stalkers, not really being microed too well by TLO. He's got 2 separate groups of them trying to surround the Stalkers. He just pulls back too much and loses about 6 or 7 of those Zerglings. Some damage done to the Nexus, but not enough to cancel it. TLO has a very slight supply lead right now and a 5th base coming down. So instead of going for a macro hatch, he says, why not just put them all at a main base? All of his overlords are moving out right now. That pneumatized Carapace and Ventral Sacks is about to finish, so he's going to load up with a number of these Zerglings and see what he can do. But they're not speedy yet, and MaNa moves right into that 5th base, force fielding off 8 drones, it looks like, and the gas finishes without being canceled for TLO. TLO taking a supply dip right now, and he's going to do some desperation lings out of the extra larvae that were at this base, and then one of his overlords actually gets killed. And it looks like he's just going to keep on pushing forward. Banelings are finished. They are the speedlings, and they're loading up into these overlords to be dropped directly onto the army, defeating the entire use of those sentries force fields. Drop, 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 and you can just see some of the sentries are dying right now.
And while that's happening, there's a nice counterattack going on at MaNa's 3rd. This is the Nexus here, and a bunch of the probes. So some good multitasking out of both players here.
The resources loss count is definitely in favor of MaNa, though. He's 2,000 less than TLO, using some force fields to direct the Banelings away from the sentries in the back. They do get some hits off on the Stalkers, but it's not so great, and he continues to lose overlords. That Warp Prism doing a huge warp in of Stalkers against these Banelings, landing a huge amount on a single Stalker and another Stalker behind it, hitting that Immortal. They have those hardened shields, which defeat the Banelings completely, I think. And it looks like he's going to lose his 3rd base. He's already lost his 4th. His main has been killed by a high ground warp in that I completely missed from that that warp prism, doing some micro from the high ground, the low ground to high ground with those immortals, and he continues to warp in extra units. He's got only a slight supply lead right now, but TLO is such on the back foot, losing 3 of his main hatcheries, including that lair. He's not going to be able to do any of the higher level tech until he gets a hive going or another layer so he can get an infestation clip, but it doesn't look like this game's going to go on for much longer. The continued warp-ins from TLO, no more pressure at his third base. He's bringing up a third nexus behind this. All of the drones at TLO's third moved down to his fourth, and the tech of TLO is getting completely demolished by all of these immortals.
This attack was really strong, and TLO didn't have roaches to handle it, and you need to be really good with banelings if you want to defeat an attack like that, and his baneling hits just weren't good enough.
You also need a macro hatch if you're going purely Zerg style or Zergling style, because you need that extra production of larvae, because they do die so quickly. You need to be able to reinforce with an entire amount of them. But this was the first game going in MaNa's favor from Team MouseSports in this best of 5, so we have at least 2 more games coming at you from the first round of 12 match of IEM 7 and Katowice. We'll be back in just a second. I'm from Chaotic TV. I am KO.
And this is Eclipse.
And we'll see you soon. Cheers.